Welcome to Upticks. I'm Jake Falcon, the founder of Falcon Wealth Advisors and your host of Upticks. Today is episode 125, Intentional Spending. Okay, thank you all for coming back to the show, and I hope all of you out there had a happy and safe New Year. I also hope that you and your family are staying safe and healthy during this horrible pandemic. Before I dive in today's show, I do want to encourage you to subscribe, and if we could flash that button up here, feel free to subscribe to Upticks or our channel, the Falcon Wealth Advisors Collective, so that you don't miss another episode of Upticks as they're released. For today's topic, it's actually twofold. So I wanted to talk about intentional spending. And you're probably thinking, hopefully, what in the heck is Jake talking about? And that's good. So hopefully it got you to tune in today's show. And also it serves two different types of people. So first, I want to talk about intentional spending for the pre-retiree. And then I want to talk about intentional spending for the post-retiree, or the retiree, I guess, not post-retiree, the retiree, post-employment. So if you're retired, feel free to fast forward, or if you want to listen to the beginning of this segment for your kids or coworkers or friends and family, feel free as well, because there's two different things that need to go on in order to achieve intentional spending. And it's based on where you are in the cycle of your career. Okay, so let's dive right into it. So what I mean by intentional spending is what I really am trying to get at is something called guilt-free spending. And all of us have probably experienced it at some point. You bought that sweater, or for me, golf clubs, or a boat, or a house, or a car, or even a coffee, right? And you had buyer's remorse, or you had regret in doing that. You felt guilty, like, my retirement account doesn't look so good, or my checking account's tight. Why am I doing this? And you create this cycle of stress and guilt around money. And it doesn't frankly need to be there if that you go into it with a plan. And I'm reading a really great book about this right now. Again, like most books that I read about finance, I don't agree with everything that the author is saying, but I do agree with what he calls conscious spending. What I call an intentional spending, he calls it conscious spending. So I wanted to kind of take some of his information, and I'll throw a plug to the book at the end of the show, but I wanted to take some of his information coupled with the way that we do things and advise our clients at Falcon Wealth Advisors to give you something to think about when you're looking at spending money. Okay, so for the pre-retiree, what I want you to think about is going through, there's a little bit of work on the front end here, but then you get this guilt-free spending pleasure of not worrying about where you're spending money. And so the first thing you want to look at is you want to calculate, while you're working, your monthly take-home expenses. This is pre-saving. So everybody gets a gross paycheck, right? And then they tax it. So that's the number that I'm looking at, right? So if you make, $120,000 a year gross, you make $10,000 a month, what is hitting your paycheck? And let's pull out 401k, health savings accounts, or anything else that you're saving to. What's going to hit that paycheck if you didn't save anywhere else? Okay, let's just say that that's $7,000 or whatever it is. It'd be different for you. And if you need help calculating that number, certainly reach out to me, and I'll do a quick plug here. My email address is simply jake@falconwealthadvisors.com. And me and my team, we can help you crunch the numbers and figure out what your true take home is before saving. Some people don't know that. And again, we can help calculate that. Or if you're hourly, sometimes that's tough to figure out as well. I'll talk about a trick about that here in a moment. Okay, so let's say we get that number, and that's $7,000. Well, they say that typically 50 to 60% of that amount should go to your fixed cost or your non-negotiables, things that you need to live. This would be things such as rent or your mortgage, food, clothing, utilities, right? Phone bills, electricity, water, right? The bare necessities, right? What are things that you need to live a comfortable, decent lifestyle? Okay, so that's what should go into that number. And I always like to round up on this number, right? So if we're doing 50% of $7,000, we'll say then it's $3,500 would be 50%. Let's round up to 4,000 or maybe even a little bit more than that, right? Just to give yourself a little bit of cushion, because you'll have these one-off, maybe property taxes will play into that, roll a little bit, and that's only a once a year thing or whatnot. So you want to round up and give yourself a little bit of cushion in this. And again, this is for somebody that's single. If you and your spouse work, well, you just double that. Maybe they bring home 7,000 also. Now you have 14,000. So your monthly fixed spending can be, 14,000, half of that 7,000, maybe we round that up to 8,000 or whatever that is, right? So that's where that fixed cost goes. Okay. For the next 10%, we like to default that into your retirement accounts or your long-term goals. Okay. So this would be a 401k, Roth IRAs, maybe just flat out brokerage accounts, but 10%. So again, if you're bringing home 7,000 a month, $700 goes into those things. Now, an important disclosure here is this is not a one size fits all exercise. I'm just kind of taking you through a way that you can get to intentional spending. What needs to happen is after you get these things allocated, you need to work with a competent financial advisor, such as us at Falcon Wealth Advisors, humble plug, to put all this information into a financial plan to make sure that 10% is adequate for your long-term goal. So, if you're 25 years old, it may work. If you're 35 and you're just now starting, you may be a little bit behind you, and we may need to ratchet that up or down, but we can run those projections for you. But this 10% for your long-term goals, typically retirement, does not include company matching. This is your money, right? So your money, 10% roughly needs to go in there. Again, we can toggle that higher or lower based on your goals, but this is just something to think about. The next 10% needs to go towards short-term goals or emergency savings, right? So if it's 700 is going into retirement, 700 is going to a savings account, or I would suggest from last week's episode, an investment account that's liquid that you can get access to if you needed it in an emergency, but you're still investing those dollars. Okay, so based on that, right? So if you put 50 to 60% in the need to have bucket, you've got 20%, 10 of which in long-term, 10 in which in short-term savings. That leaves you anywhere 20 to 30% to the best part, which is guilt-free spending. This is what we're trying to get to. And guilt-free spending means with this extra 20% or whatever's left in that. So if you make $7,000 a month, that'd be after taxes, that'd be $1,400 if it was 20%. You can spend this on whatever you want, guilt-free. So if you're like me and you love playing golf, you've got $1,400 in this bucket, then you can go spend on golf clubs, green fees, travel to play golf, whatever that may be. If you like to buy new clothes or shoes, guilt-free spending on that. If you like to drink coffee every day and you want to spend $10 a day, guilt-free spending on that, right? And so the whole point of today's show is this intentional spending. If you can allocate what needs to happen and you have this leftover slush fund every month, with confidence that you can go out there and spend this money and not have this buyer's remorse. And that's what I'm trying to help people get away from, right? Don't feel guilty about spending things. And another important point that I want to make here is it's okay to splurge on things that you enjoy and to be completely cheap and tight on things that you don't enjoy. So Rachel and I, she loves to read. It's crazy. She's read 130 books this year, which a lot of you probably don't believe me, but she did. She either listened to audio, which she did about 50. She listened to 50 audio books, and so she read about 80 books. It's absurd, and I can testify. I've seen her do most all of it. She reads a lot at home. So she spends money on books, right? We have a lot of books in our house because she's buying these books or downloading them or whatever, right? That's what she likes spending money on. I like spending money on golf. I've got nice golf clubs. I play at some nice golf courses. I'll travel for golf when we can do it again safely, right? That's what I spend money on. But we don't drink coffee, right? So I'm not going to a local coffee shop every day and dropping $10 or whatever. We don't eat fast food, right? So I'm not going through the drive-thru at lunch. Believe it or not, I go home for lunch every day, not to be cheap. It's more to be healthy, but I am saving a lot of money by not going out to eat for lunch every day. I go home to my house, say hi to Einstein, have a quick lunch, and get back to work. More for health reasons, but it does help me financially as well. But I'm not saying that you shouldn't drink coffee. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't go out to eat if that's what you enjoy doing, right? Maybe you don't spend money on golf like I do, or read or buy books like Rachel does. That's fine. My point is we all have this 20% bucket. If you're intentionally spending, that you could spend on whatever the heck you want and have no worries about it. And to me, that's such a greater quality or relationship with money, a quality of life with money, or a relationship with money, is having that empowerment to know that I don't have to feel bad about spending this money. And again, when that bucket runs low for the month, then you could say, you know what, guys, I was going to go play golf, or I want to go on that trip, or I don't want to go on that trip. I'm going to pass, and it's okay. And because you've already spent the money down, right? And then you go next month and so forth. I talked about our budget we have to do quarterly, but you guys are getting the point. Okay, good. So before I switch gears to the retiree, I did point out if you're an hourly employee, a quick trick to find out what your annual income is. If you make $25 an hour, typically you double that. So 25 times 2 is 50. And then you add 3 zeros to that. And if you're working a full-time gig, that should mean you should make plus or minus around $50,000 a year. It's a quick trick on how that math works out. So $25 an hour, double it as $50, add 3 zeros, make about $50,000 a year. So for your hourly people out there, that's a quick way to find out what your annual income plus or minus should be. Okay, good. So that's for all my pre-retirees that are watching this. If you want us to go through this exercise with you, I'm happy to do it. Certainly, I don't want you to have guilt when you're going out there and buying your coffee or playing golf, right? Or shopping or whatever it is you want to do. I'm not here to judge. I don't like those gurus that are out there say, cut coffee out of your life and you'll be a millionaire in 5 years. Well, that's ridiculous. If you like coffee, you should spend money on coffee, as long as it's a healthy amount, obviously. Okay, good. So for my retirees, all right, so retirees are a little bit different, right? So you're not employed, right? So you're not getting this income from effort from wages. You're getting income from your investments. And you also don't need to save in a 401k anymore because you've been there and done that. So how does a retiree intentionally spend? And I would argue you can do a lot of it the same way. You just have to change the formula a little bit. So what a lot of people out there suggest retirees do is that they assume, and this is very common, assume a 4% withdrawal rate from their nest egg. Okay, so let's talk about that. So if you have $1 million and you pull 4%, that's $40,000 a year from the account. You got to subtract taxes out of that too if it's in an IRA. And then maybe you get Social Security, right? Maybe that's $2,000 a month. And if you're married, maybe they get Social Security, maybe they get $1,000 or $2,000 a month also. And you add all that together, and that is, basically your fixed expense, right? Or that 50 to 60%, what I was suggesting earlier, right? That should cover your day-to-day needs of what you need to live. But what we do at Falcon Wealth Advisors is we do something we call stressing the plan. So we know, okay, 4%, that also means that your investments just need to make 4% a year. And theoretically, you're just going to be pulling the earnings. You'll never dip into the principal. For some of our clients, though, in their early years especially, they want to spend more than that 4%. They say, Jake, I've been working for 30 years, saved all this money. I don't want to live off 50 or 60,000 for the first decade of retirement. So then what do I do? Well, that's when we stress the plan and we find what that true ceiling is. Is it 5%? Is it 7%? Is it 8%? How much can you really afford to pull from your nest egg without running out of money? So we'll run that in the scenario and be able to tell you, hey, 4% is great, but if we're going to make you 6 or 7%, you can afford to pull 6 or 7%, right? Or if we don't make you 6 or 7%, you can pull 6 or 7% for 10 years, then you've got to cut it back down to 4. So there's all these different scenarios we can run. But what I like is we use that 4% as a base, and then we add your guilt-free spending on top of that. And so we can literally add and layer on additional goals in your financial plan to see what these additional spending are. And we call it stressing the plan, right? How much can you afford above and beyond that basic necessity? And simply put, now the good news is you don't need to carve out 10% for your 401k. You don't need to carve out 10% for short-term emergencies because you have that money, right? You have your nest egg. The most important thing is your nest egg needs to grow faster than you're spending it. Or maybe you do want to spend it down, and that's fine. It just needs to grow to keep up with your spend down. And that's what we specialize at Falcon Wealth Advisors with. Not only do we help you pre-retirement get set up for it, but our value really comes in as you make that transition into retirement, and we help you manage your money accordingly so that you can live off of it, be inspired to go do what you've always wanted to do and never run out of money. That's really what we're in business to do at Falcon Wealth Advisors, is to help track that for you, manage it efficiently, and then meet with you regularly to update those things. Right? So again, they're both intentional. You know, okay, I'm pre-retired, Jake's got it out, layered out. I got 50, 60% for this. I got 10 for this. I got 10 for this. And I've got an extra 20% to do whatever the heck I want with. Awesome, right? And you know everything's set up. Now, again, another disclosure, I want to plug all that in a financial plan for you first. So don't take this as financial advice. I think it's a good way to start the conversation, but come on in, or obviously over Zoom or phone call. Let's talk about it, Falcon Wealth Advisor. Let's put all that information in a financial plan and see what it projects out to. And if you're retired, say, okay, 4% is going to get my base level. Jake's going to stress the plan. He's going to tell me how much I can afford to spend above and beyond that. That is my guilt-free spending, so that I know I've got this cushion every year. If I want to spend a little bit more, I can, and I don't have to worry about it. Okay, good. So I hope that helped you guys a little bit with thinking about intentional spending. I don't like hearing people that have buyer's remorse. I don't like having it. I certainly don't want my wife to have it. And again, you can alleviate some of that by having a financial plan, by having a conversation, and going over it. So good. So thank you again for tuning in. Before I go into my fun fact, what I wanted to do today actually is I want to go over some of the books that I'm reading. I've got a little bit of a problem that I'll talk about here. But first, a quick plug. Again, subscribe, please, to our content. Thank you so much for tuning in. A thumbs up button would be greatly appreciated. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, thank you so much for tuning in as well. You can find me out there on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If we're not already connected, feel free to send me a friend request. I love expanding my community and meeting new people. Our team is out there also on all the various, not all of them, but on various social media platforms. So we're out there on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Quick shout out to Corey Bittner, my business partner. He's got a blog and a podcast and video out there called In the Money Insight. You can find that right here on this YouTube channel. His videos, if you just scroll down, are right underneath mine. And then James Lewis, another one of our advisors on our team, he's kicking out Financial Philosophy. It's a podcast and blog, and you'll just need to go to www.falconwealthadvisors.com under our content section to find that. It's also out there on the various podcast platforms. Okay, so to talk about my problem. So I have a problem with reading multiple books at the same time. For years, as long as I can remember, I was always a one book, one at a time, right? Read the book all the way through, then move on to the next one. And I got to give credit to Rachel. She definitely got me into reading more. So I've definitely picked up my reading more over the last couple of years. But I asked her the other day, no, this is probably months ago, do you ever read multiple books at once? And she's like, sure, of course I do. For her, she might read a fiction book, right, and listen to a nonfiction book, right? So she's got two things going on at once. So I dabbled in that, right? So I don't listen to books. I listen to podcasts, but I read books. And so I started a book, and I've enjoyed it. It is a big book. It's Ray Dalio's book, Principles, that a client referred to me. It's an awesome book, and I've read about 2/3 of it. But then another book came my way by Deepak Chopra. I think it's called Meditations or something. And I've read a couple of his books, and I really like him. So I started reading that one, and it's good. And then I think I read a blog or a podcast about conscious leadership, about the founder of Whole Foods. I was like, oh, I like books about consciousness. I'll pick that one up too. And I started reading that one. Then I had another client recommend How to Retire Happy, Wild, and Free. So I started reading that one. And there is also, she said it was really good. So I started reading that one because I talk to retirees all the time. So hopefully you're getting at my problem. And then for months, I've wanted to pick up this book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. It's a horrible name. It's about personal finance. This is the one that I was talking about. I don't agree with everything in this book. And it's written more for, I would argue, a millennial or a younger person starting out. But if you want to get some tips, it's pretty good. But I started reading this one. I'm trying to think of what else I have. And then I picked up a book called The Ensemble Practice about managing my practice and making sure that we're filling all the gaps in for our clients. So I read a book about options trading called Iron Condors. I've already finished that one. So I guess that's not on the list. So what I've had is I've got this stack of books at my house that I just pick up one and read. It's almost like reading a magazine or a blog. So I don't know if it's good or bad, but I'd be curious to hear your comments. Are you like that? And do you read 3, 4, 5 books at the same time? Or am I going down a very slippery slope that all of these books are going to merge together in my brain, which I'm okay with? Again, I'm getting something out of all of them. That's why I'm reading them. But I'm curious. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. So please message me on LinkedIn or Facebook or send me an email. I'd love to hear your comments. Do you too have this reading problem where you're reading multiple books at the same time? Okay, so that's all the time that I have for you today. I hope all of you, like I said, are out there staying safe and healthy. Thank you so much for tuning in, and hope you have a great week.